After the divorce, my ex-husband seized the $10 million mansion and flung the invitation to his wedding with his mistress at me. Mother smiled and said, "Go, my daughter. Mom will show you a magnificent play." With the ink still wet on my divorce papers, the man I loved more than life itself not only stole my entire $15 million estate, built with my own hands, but then he laughed in my face, tossing a vibrant red wedding invitation featuring him and his mistress. "Come this weekend, ex-wife," he sneered, "and congratulate us. Come see what real happiness looks like." That invitation felt like a dagger, but my mother's enigmatic smile that day, that was the true harbinger of a storm. My name is Isabel, and for years I believed I was living a dream. I'm an interior designer, and when I met Ethan, a charming and talented media executive, it was instant, electric love. He painted a dazzling world for me, a rosy future, and I believed every single word. We married, and my mother, Eleanor, gave us the most incredible wedding gift, a sprawling estate in the exclusive Hamptons, a place we lovingly called the Haven. My mother, a simple homemaker, had raised me alone after losing my father early. She poured every last penny of her savings into that house. Knowing her sacrifice, I dedicated 3 intense years of my youth, my passion, my very soul, to personally designing and overseeing its construction. I transformed it into a work of art. This wasn't just a house, it was a testament to my mother's heart and my dream of building a happy home with the man I adored. I didn't know that my paradise was about to become my personal hell. As soon as the estate was completed and appraised at a staggering $15 million, Ethan began to change. The warmth in his eyes turned cold. He started coming home late, his excuses thinner than gossamer. Then, my mother-in-law, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, moved in. She had always looked down on me, thinking my background wasn't up to par. Now, she became a tormentor, turning me into her unpaid servant, her criticism a constant, biting drone. But the ultimate betrayal, the pinnacle of lies and cruelty, came from Ethan himself. About 2 months ago, he came home, his face etched with worry. He claimed his media company was on the brink of bankruptcy, needing a massive loan to survive. He pleaded with me, telling me the Haven was the only thing that could save him. He needed to mortgage it. "Isabel, please, just this once," he begged, tears welling in his eyes as he clutched my hands. "If we get through this, I'll make it all up to you. This house is yours. I just need to put it solely in my name for the loan application. I would never take it from you." As a wife who loved him, foolishly, blindly, how could I watch him sink? I didn't hesitate. The next day, he took me to a notary. A thick stack of documents lay on the table. He pointed exactly where I needed to sign, reassuring me it was just a collateral guarantee agreement, a standard procedure for the bank loan. Consumed with worry, trusting him completely, I signed without reading every page. That, my friends, was the fatal mistake of my life. I didn't know that nestled amongst those dozens of pages, he had cleverly inserted an interspousal transfer deed. My signature, dashed off in a state of emotional turmoil, legally ended my ownership of the masterpiece I had poured my heart into. Once he had what he wanted, his true nature exploded into the open. The worried facade vanished. He no longer came home alone. Chloe, an influencer I vaguely suspected was his mistress, was now openly by his side. Right there, in front of me and his gleeful mother, he casually declared, "I want a divorce." My mother-in-law, far from surprised, smiled with sickening satisfaction. It wasn't a crisis, it was a charade, orchestrated by them both. The company troubles? A calculated lie to trick me into signing away my home. "Look at you," he sneered, his voice dripping with contempt. "Always stuck at home. You're so plain and boring. You don't fit into my world anymore. Chloe, she's my kind of woman." I was paralyzed. In a single afternoon, I had lost everything. The husband I adored, the house I had breathed life into, and my faith in love itself. They threw me out with nothing but an old suitcase and a broken heart. And to rub salt into the wound, he pulled out that wedding invitation. "Oh, I almost forgot," he said, a devilish grin spreading across his face. This weekend, Chloe and I are getting married right here in this estate. Come and congratulate us. Come and see what kind of woman is truly worthy of me and this house." I stood there, tears blurring the hot summer sun, overwhelmed by humiliation, helplessness, and utter despair. With nowhere else to go, I dragged my heavy suitcase back to my mother's small apartment. Seeing me, pathetic and broken, she didn't ask much. She just held me. I sobbed out the whole story, Ethan's betrayal, the wicked plot, showing her the invitation, the very proof of my humiliation. I expected her to cry with me, to rage, to curse that traitor. But she didn't. She looked at the invitation in silence. And then an enigmatic, inscrutable smile I had never seen before appeared on her lips. "They're getting married at the Haven?" she asked, her voice eerily calm. "Good. Very good." I stared at her, astonished. "Mom, why would you say that?" She put down the invitation, patted my shoulder. Her eyes, usually so gentle, now held a sharp, calculating glint. "Don't cry, honey," she said firmly. "Make yourself beautiful. Choose your most spectacular dress and go to that wedding. Mom's going to show you a magnificent performance." Pause, slightly melancholic expression. "By the way, if you're still with me, if my story has you hooked, make sure to hit that subscribe button down below. More unbelievable twists and turns are definitely coming your way." A truly magnificent performance? My mother's enigmatic smile, far from alleviating my pain, only left me more confused. My world had just collapsed. I'd lost the man I loved, the house I'd poured my soul into. I was humiliated to my core. How could she be so calm? How could she smile at her own daughter's tragedy? "Mom," I sobbed, leaning on her shoulder, "it's all over. I have nothing. He even took the house you gave me. I'm useless. I couldn't protect it." I thought she would comfort me, tell me material possessions can be recovered. But instead, she patted my back and helped me sit. Her normally tender gaze now held a strangely sharp intensity. "Isabel," she said, her voice no longer just a loving mother's, but someone completely in control. "Lift your head. Tears solve nothing. The one who should be crying now is not you, but that traitor." She went to the kitchen and prepared a cup of hot herbal tea. The warmth seeped into my hands, but it couldn't thaw my frozen heart. I stared blankly at the wall, my mind empty, haunted only by Ethan and Chloe's smiling faces on the invitation, and his cruel words, "Come see what real happiness looks like." My mother sat across from me, watching silently. Her look wasn't pity, but patience, as if she were waiting for me to find my own calm. After a long while, when my sobs subsided, she spoke slowly. "Isabel, have you ever wondered why I always hid my past? Why I told people I was a simple homemaker living off the small inheritance your father left?" I looked at her confused. "No, I always believed it. I thought you struggled your whole life to raise me, and that the estate was everything you had." My mother sighed, then walked to an old wooden cabinet. She opened a locked drawer and pulled out a dark red lacquer box, marked by time. She placed it on the table and carefully opened it. Inside were no jewels or money, but old black and white photos and yellowed notebooks. "This is the real me," she said calmly, handing me a photo. An elegant young woman posed next to a famous French chef. Below it, an inscription, "Eleanor Vance, winner of the International Master Chef Competition, Paris, 1995. I gasped. "Mom, is this you?" "Yes," she nodded. Another photo, her shaking hands with a head of state at a luxury restaurant opening. Then, clippings from famous gourmet magazines, all speaking of one woman, the grand dame of American hospitality. "Mom, you are?" I stammered, incredulous. "I am the founder and owner of the Sovereign Group," she said, her voice serene. The Sovereign Group. The name hit me like lightning. It was a national brand, a hospitality and gourmet empire valued in the billions, with hundreds of luxury hotels and restaurants worldwide. "But why?" "Because of your father," she said, a deep sadness crossing her gaze. "He was a good man, a talented artist. I loved him madly, but he could never overcome my shadow, which was too large. My money and fame, without realizing it, killed his self-esteem, his talent. He lived his whole life feeling inferior. She took my hand. When your father died, I promised myself I wouldn't let that tragedy repeat with you, my daughter. I wanted you to have a normal life, to find a man who truly loved you, not for the immense fortune you would inherit. That's why I decided to live in the shadows. I watched Ethan very closely, she continued, her voice hardening. At first, I hoped he was an ambitious, good man. I thought perhaps you had found the right one. But I still didn't completely trust him. The blood of an entrepreneur doesn't allow me to bet everything on uncertain odds. She gave that enigmatic smile again. So, when I gifted you the Haven, I didn't just give you a property. What does that gift mean? I asked, still reeling. It wasn't a simple gift, my daughter. It was a trap. A legally perfect trap. And Ethan, with his greed and ignorance, has walked right into it. Saying this, she pulled a new, dark blue leather folder from the box. Your real wedding gift is here. I took it, my hands trembling. It felt strangely heavy, not just with paper, but with the weight of the secrets I was about to uncover. My mother's glorious past, the sovereign group empire, it all exceeded my wildest imagination. And now my wedding gift concealed another secret, a trap. I opened the cover. The first thing my eyes saw was, conditional deed of gift of real property. Conditional deed of gift, I murmured, utterly bewildered. Exactly, my mother said, her voice now like an experienced attorney. When I decided to gift you the estate, I had the best legal team at the Sovereign Group draft this contract. It's not a normal deed of gift, my daughter. She pointed to a clause, printed in small type, but carefully underlined. I squinted and read it. The efficacy of this deed of gift and the property rights of the Donees, Isabel and Ethan Hayes, shall only be recognized as long as both parties maintain a valid marital relationship evidenced by a legal marriage certificate and live together as a unified couple. I read the clause over and over. Then, an astonishing realization began to dawn. Mom, what does this mean? It means, she explained clearly, that the ownership of the estate is directly tied to your marital status. As long as you are husband and wife, the house is yours. But the moment the marriage is legally dissolved by divorce, this deed of gift is automatically voided, and the property immediately reverts to its original owner, me. The world seemed to spin. A perfect legal trap. A move no one, not even the most cunning, could have foreseen. But he already tricked me into signing the deed over to him. Mom, I said, still worried, what good does that do? My mother scoffed. He's just a mid-level media executive. How could he possibly outsmart my legal team? Those papers he made you sign, whether a deed of transfer or a property agreement, are legally considered secondary transactions derived from the original contract. To put it simply, Isabel, Ethan's claim of ownership grew from the root of the contract I gave you. Now that you have divorced, that root has been severed. The tree has no choice but to wither and die. All subsequent documents are worthless. The house has not been his from the moment the judge issued the divorce decree. Right now, he is illegally residing in my house. I was completely stunned. My mother, whom I thought only knew cooking, possessed a terrifyingly calculating mind, a foresight that had prepared an escape route for me from the very beginning. Ethan, my mother continued, a scornful edge to her voice, made the fatal mistake of the greedy and short-sighted. He focused so much on how to steal the property that he forgot to protect the one thing that gave him access to it, you. He single-handedly destroyed the only clause that could have given him everything. My pain seemed to shrink by half. In its place, a small, jubilant joy began to bloom. So, what do we do now? Do we sue him immediately and take back the house? Sue? Why the rush, honey? My mother smiled, that cold, enigmatic smile again. What fun would a lawsuit be? We don't have to do anything. Just sit back and wait for the fish to jump into the net themselves. She picked up the wedding invitation from the table, admiring it as if it were a work of art. He sent an invitation, didn't he? He said he wanted to get married right there on that estate. Perfect. The more noise he makes, the more humiliating his downfall will be. He wanted the wedding of the century. And I will give him the disaster of the century. What do you mean, Mom? I still couldn't quite follow her thinking. Did he hire a catering company? Yes, I heard it's a luxury catering company called Royal Provisions. Excellent. My mother nodded, her eyes shining with cunning. Then things are even easier than I thought. She didn't explain further. She stood, came to me, and took my hand. What you need to do is wipe away your tears, get rid of all the sadness, go shopping, make yourself beautiful, and choose the most dazzling dress. That day, you must appear as a queen to witness the fall of those who despised you. Leave everything else in my hands. Tears welled up again, but this time, they weren't of pain. They were tears of gratitude, joy, and the overwhelming happiness of knowing I wasn't alone. I had my mother, a mother who not only loved me, but was a warrior, a true queen. The wedding invitation, once a symbol of my utter humiliation, had transformed. It was now an invitation to witness that man's downfall, and I would be in the front row. Once the plan for revenge was drawn, my mood shifted entirely. Pain and despair were replaced by a strange anticipation, an electric excitement. I was no longer the victim. I became a spectator, awaiting a magnificent performance. And the main actors, Ethan and Chloe, did not disappoint. They played their roles perfectly, with impeccable brazenness and ridicule. Ethan, drunk on victory, having easily secured a $15 million estate and rid himself of me, that thorn in his side, was like a tiger unleashed. He no longer hid. He publicized his relationship with Chloe, flaunting it across all media and social networks, as if wanting to shout his triumph to the entire world. Chloe's social media, with its hundreds of thousands of followers, became a reality TV show, showcasing her lavish life at the Haven. Every day, she posted dozens of photos, peace in my corner of paradise, next to the infinity pool in a designer bikini, beautiful as in a magazine, with breakfast on the balcony. When you wake up every day and the person you love has prepared such a breakfast for you, can one be happier? Seeing those photos, I could only laugh scornfully. That paradise she was enjoying? I had taken care of it, brick by brick, blade of grass by blade of grass. That breakfast she boasted about? Ethan probably bought it quickly. He couldn't even boil an egg. But the peak of their ostentation came with the posts about their wedding of the century. Ethan, leveraging his media connections, turned it into a major publicity event. He invited online gossip magazines, famous bloggers. He spared no expense, investing enormous sums. Chloe's custom-designed dress by a famous French designer, limited edition Tiffany diamond rings, and a banquet in the Haven's garden with hundreds of VIP guests, catered by Regal Company Royal Provisions. Every time an article was published, every image shared, it was like another knife plunged into my heart, Ethan proudly declared in an interview. But now it didn't hurt. On the contrary, it filled me with a quiet satisfaction. The bigger, the louder they were, the more miserable their fall would be. Meanwhile, my mother and I lived a quiet life. She took me to one of her high-security, private penthouses downtown. Rest here, she told me. Your only job now is to make yourself truly beautiful, truly radiant. She assembled a team of experts for me, a nutritionist, a personal trainer, a skincare specialist. I began a scientific regimen of exercise and diet. I read books, listened to music, immersed myself in art. I wasn't just recovering physically, I was reinventing my entire soul. Sometimes, old mutual friends would send me articles about Ethan and Chloe, adding words of comfort. Forget him. That kind of person doesn't deserve you. I'm sick of seeing that girl. What a shameless mistress. I only smiled and thanked them. They didn't know I didn't need their pity. I was waiting for a different performance. Drunk on victory, Ethan had completely lowered his guard. He didn't wonder why I had disappeared so quietly. Perhaps he thought I was so hurt I'd accepted my fate and was licking my wounds somewhere. Nor did he suspect anything about the catering company. The fame and exorbitant price of Royal Provisions convinced him it was the perfect choice to demonstrate his status. He didn't know he was placing the sharpest knife in the hands of his enemy. Their charade of ostentation grew increasingly ridiculous. Chloe even made a house tour video, showing off every corner of the estate, presenting the furniture I had personally chosen as if it were the result of her exquisite taste. In the comments, thousands praised her, but some of my friends, who had visited the haven, recognized the truth. Hey, Isabel chose that ceramic vase. That layout looks familiar. It's exactly Isabel's style. But those comments were quickly deleted. They wanted to erase all trace of me, to act as if I had never existed in that house. But they didn't know that the soul of this estate, and the soul of the performance about to begin, were in someone else's hands. The offices of Royal Provisions were on the top floor of a luxury building in Manhattan. Ethan and Chloe entered with heads held high, like VIP clients. They were led to a private meeting room with glass walls overlooking the city. A middle-aged woman in an impeccable black suit, her hair neatly pulled back, entered. It was Miss Davis, Royal Provisions Operations Director, and one of my mother's most confident right-hand people. Mr. Hayes, Miss Thompson. Good morning. Miss Davis smiled professionally. It is a great honor for us to serve at your wedding of the century. Good morning, Miss Davis, Ethan said smugly, shaking her hand. You know Royal Provisions' reputation. My wedding must be the best in everything, the most perfect. Money is no object. Of course, Miss Davis nodded. That's our motto. What are your ideas for the banquet menu? Chloe, who had been quiet, spoke in a saccharine voice. I'm not really into rustic American cuisine. I'm more accustomed to international dishes. The menu has to be truly luxurious, full of things like Alaskan king crab, Wagyu beef, French foie gras. I'm not used to low-class, heavy food like chitlins or Brunswick stew. She glanced sideways at Ethan, a veiled jab at me, his rustic ex-wife. Ethan nodded approvingly. That's right. My Chloe has very refined taste. Miss Davis, prepare the most exclusive menu. My guests are all people of status. We cannot disappoint them. Miss Davis simply smiled meaningfully. She noted all their requests. Yes, understood. I promise we will prepare a special menu that will give you and all your guests an unforgettable gastronomic experience. After bidding farewell to Ethan and Chloe, Miss Davis immediately made a call. Madam Chairwoman, the fish has bitten. On the other end, my mother, Eleanor, sat in her study, sipping tea. She smiled slightly. Good. Proceed according to plan. Tell the kitchen team to prepare the menu in the most special way. Yes, understood. But, Madam Chairwoman, Miss Davis hesitated. Won't this affect Royal Provisions' reputation? Reputation? My mother laughed. What is the reputation of a subsidiary compared to the honor of my daughter? Besides, this is not destruction. It is a culinary art performance. We are going to teach them what the truth tastes like. And so, a detailed plan was elaborated. My mother, the Grand Dame of American Hospitality, personally drafted the secret menu. She didn't need to be present, but all her orders were transmitted and executed absolutely. She called the most talented chef in the Sovereign Group restaurant chain, a master of traditional Southern cuisine, capable of turning the humblest dish into a work of art. Your mission this time, she told him, is not to make it taste good, but to make it taste very authentic. The flavor of lies and the flavor of the bill coming due. All preparations were carried out in secret. Ethan and Chloe remained convinced they would have a royal banquet. A few days before the wedding, Royal Provisions sent them a fake menu full of bombastic French names, seared foie gras with fig sauce, baked lobster thermidor. They nodded contentedly, unaware that behind those names hid a completely different truth. They were too intoxicated by victory, too arrogant to have the slightest caution. They didn't know that this arrogance was turning them into puppets in my mother's hands. In the days following that fateful meeting, my world truly changed. I no longer spent nights crying, no longer woke with despair. The pain was still there, a deep wound that would never fully heal, but it no longer dominated me. In its place burned a new flame, determination. I was no longer Isabel, the weak, abandoned wife. I was becoming the daughter of Eleanor Vance, the Grand Dame of American Hospitality, a woman who would never allow anyone else to decide her fate. My mother had given me not just a plan for revenge, but something far more important. She had given me back my self-esteem. Don't waste your tears on someone who doesn't deserve them, she told me. Instead of crying, turn the pain into strength. Stand up, hold your head high, and show the world that without him, you are 10,000 times better off. And that's exactly what I did. I began a transformation, a reinvention of myself, both inside and out. My mother's luxurious penthouse was no longer a refuge for sadness. It became my personal training center. Every morning, instead of curling up under the covers, I got up at 5 a.m. to practice yoga with my mother on the terrace, breathing the fresh city air, feeling a new energy. Afterward, an hour in the private gym with the best personal trainer. Every drop of sweat not only restored my figure, but washed away the worries and bitterness accumulated over years. My diet changed completely. My mother, with her expert gastronomic knowledge, designed a nutritious plan that not only improved my health, but also my skin and figure. I learned to care for my body, to love myself again. But the biggest change wasn't physical, it was mental. My mother didn't give me a second to wallow in negative thoughts. She took me to art exhibitions, classical music concerts. She introduced me to her friends, successful businesswomen, talented artists. I entered a completely different world, a world of knowledge, creativity, and strong, independent women. I listened to their stories, learned from their experiences, and slowly realized that a woman's world cannot revolve solely around one man. It was much wider, much more colorful. And then, my mother took me to her best friend, the famous fashion designer, Mrs. Montgomery. "Eliza," she said, "help this child find herself again. Create an outfit that transforms her from Cinderella to a true queen." Mrs. Montgomery looked at me with the piercing gaze of an artist. She didn't ask about my past. She simply observed my gaze, my walk, even how I sat. "Eleanor," she said, "don't worry. This child is not Cinderella. She has always been a princess. She just momentarily forgot where she left her crown." For the next week, I spent most of my time in Mrs. Montgomery's studio. She didn't just try dresses on me. She taught me about style, about combining outfits, about the language of fashion. She told me clothes are not just to cover the body, they're a statement of who you are. "Choose a color that tells your story right now," she said. And I chose ruby red, the color of power, charm, passion, and vengeance. The evening gown was ready the day before the wedding. When I put it on and looked in the mirror, I didn't recognize myself. The high-quality satin silk dress fit my body perfectly, highlighting every curve I had earned with my dedication. A bold strapless neckline, a deeply cut back, a high slit. I was no longer the docile, simple Isabel. The woman in the mirror was a completely different person, seductive, mysterious, with an air of undeniable authority. "Magnificent," Mrs. Montgomery admired. "Isabel, you don't have to do anything. The moment you walk in there, you will have already won." I smiled. I was ready. I no longer felt fear or resentment. Just a strange, cold calm. I wasn't going there to ruin a party or to recover what was lost. That love, that person, they were no longer worth it. I was going as a special spectator, to see a performance, and to officially close a chapter of my past. I would show Ethan, Chloe, and his entire family how splendid and strong the woman they had cruelly discarded had been reborn. That weekend, the Hampton sky was clear and sunny, as if to further enhance the wedding of the century. The Haven estate, into which I had poured all my passion, was now ostentatiously decorated, but in a completely different style. The refined, cozy atmosphere I had created was gone, replaced by exaggerated, opulent luxury. Thousands of white and pink roses formed a gigantic floral arch. White silk ribbons hung everywhere. In the center of the garden, a massive LED screen projected the couple's romantic photos on a loop. Everything was perfect and ostentatious perfection on the outside, but utterly empty within. From noon on, luxury cars began arriving in a line. The guests were influential personalities from the worlds of business and entertainment. Journalists gathered, ready to capture every moment of this much-talked-about event. The protagonists, Ethan and Chloe, appeared as a fairy tale prince and princess. Chloe wore a designer gown with thousands of glittering diamonds. Her face was perfectly made up, her smile unrestrained. She clung to Ethan's arm, moving from table to table, receiving congratulations and envious glances. She was at the peak of her life. She had landed a rich husband, her dream wedding, an estate millions would envy. She didn't know it was all a sandcastle about to be swept away by a tsunami. Ethan, too, was drunk on victory. He looked elegant and self-assured. Having seized the estate and married a beautiful, new rich wife, he felt like a king. He wanted everyone to flatter and envy him. He had completely forgotten my existence. Or perhaps he deliberately tried to forget it. To him, I was a mistake of the past, a stain that had been cleaned. My ex-mother-in-law, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, also in an elegant pantsuit, moved around, boasting about her new daughter-in-law, who was indeed worthy of her son. Look, she proudly told her friends, this is how my son's wife should be. Beautiful, capable, and knows how to treat people. She is a blessing to our family. She didn't know that the blessing she was bragging about was about to turn into a catastrophe. The wedding ceremony unfolded smoothly, perfectly. They exchanged rings, cut the cake, toasted with champagne. The applause was continuous. Ethan took the microphone, his voice full of false emotion. Thank you all for coming to celebrate with us today. Today, I am the happiest man in the world because I have married the most wonderful woman, Chloe. He turned to her, kissed her forehead. The entire venue erupted in applause and cheers. Camera flashes fired incessantly, immortalizing their golden moment. They were at the height of fulfillment, of victory. And that was the perfect moment. Then, the master of ceremonies announced, and now, ladies and gentlemen, raise your glasses and prepare to enjoy the royal banquet, prepared by the best catering company in New York, Royal Provisions. That was the signal. I, who until now had been sitting quietly in the parked car outside, observing everything in secret, smiled faintly. Their performance was over. Now it was time for my mother's show to begin. Following orders, dozens of waiters in crisp white uniforms slowly emerged from the kitchen area, respectfully carrying trays of food covered with silver lids. Everyone was expectant. What delicacies would be served at such a luxurious wedding? Lobster? Filet mignon? Something exotic? Ethan and Chloe looked on, satisfied smiles still on their lips. They were ready for the admiration and praise. And then, the silver lids were lifted in unison. The luxurious banquet space was instantly filled with a very characteristic, intense, earthy aroma, utterly out of place. It was the pungent odor of spicy Brunswick stew, accompanied by deep-fried chitlins. The instant those lids came off, the garden fell into a stunned silence. The melodic background music suddenly became incongruous. Laughter died away. Hundreds of guests, dressed in their elegant evening gowns and tuxedos, looked with indescribable expressions at the dishes placed before them. There were no red Alaskan king crabs, no fragrant grilled Wagyu beef, no rich French foie gras. Instead, before them lay the most rustic dishes imaginable, dishes they probably never dreamed of seeing at a wedding of the century. On the white English porcelain plates with delicate gold rims, artful presentations of Brunswick stew sat. Alongside it, carefully arranged pieces of deep-fried chitlins. Quintessential street food, respectfully served at the tables of a multi-million-dollar wedding. But what truly caused the strongest impression, what seized everyone's sense of smell, was the stew itself, a potent, heavy dish, its characteristic odor permeating the air. For gourmets, it was an aroma representing the southern soul. But in such a luxurious setting, it was an olfactory disaster. The intense smell of chitlins ruthlessly made its way into every corner of the garden, mixing with the Lady Chanel No. 5 perfume, creating the strangest combination of scents in the world. After a few seconds of stupefaction, the guests began to look at each other. Whispers turned into a growing murmur. What? What is this? Chitlins. Am I seeing this right? My God, what is that terrible smell? Some ladies, accustomed to immaculate environments, wrinkled their faces in disgust, covering their noses. Even the journalists and reporters, invited to write complimentary articles, were left open-mouthed, cameras in hand, unsure whether they should take photos or not. This was not a simple accident. It was a humiliation. elaborately, artistically orchestrated. The first to collapse was Chloe, the bride. She stood on the stage, a happy smile still plastered on her face. But when the intense smell of the stew reached her nose, and she looked down to see deep-fried chitlins respectfully served on the tables, her smile froze. Her perfectly made-up face went from red to pale, then utterly colorless. She was an influencer who had built her entire brand on a refined, high-class image. She constantly boasted about Michelin-starred dining, claiming she couldn't eat low-class food. And now, on the most important day of her life, under the spotlight of hundreds of cameras and the eyes of her peers, she faced a banquet of Brunswick stew and chitlins. A wave of extreme shame and embarrassment washed over her. She felt stripped naked, mocked mercilessly. Ethan, Ethan, she turned to him, her voice cracking. What? What is happening? But Ethan was in no mood to comfort her. He, too, was stunned. His attractive face was now crimson with anger and humiliation. He had spent millions on this grand wedding to consolidate his status, mobilized all his connections. He wanted everyone to admire and envy him. But now he received only bewildered stares, muffled giggles, and a smell of chitlins that wouldn't wash away. His wedding of the century had turned into the laughingstock of the century. He felt an invisible slap from the heavens, a blow that hurt him to the bone. The surprise morphed into uncontrollable rage. He was sure someone had tried to ruin his wedding. And that person could be no one else but me. Isabel, that bitch. He clenched his teeth, his eyes bloodshot. He forgot all pretense, all his role. Now he was just a man maddened by humiliation. Ethan's anger erupted like a long-contained volcano. He didn't care about the guests or the bride sobbing beside him. His only goal was to find the culprit and tear them to shreds. He rushed down from the stage, his face flushed, eyes wild. Where's the manager? The manager of Royal Provisions. Get out here now, he bellowed, his voice echoing through the garden, drowning out the music and the murmurs. Everyone stepped aside, frightened by the groom's fury. Immediately, Miss Davis, the impeccable, calm woman Ethan still believed was a high executive, emerged from the kitchen. Her face was surprisingly serene and professional. Yes, Mr. Hayes. To what do we owe your anger? You still ask. Ethan ran up and grabbed Miss Davis by the lapels. It was an extremely rude, uncontrolled act. Look what you've done to my wedding. Chitlins? Brunswick stew? Are you all crazy? Do you know how much I paid for this wedding? I will ruin you. Miss Davis showed no fear. She calmly pushed Ethan's hands away and straightened her lapels. Mr. Hayes, I recommend you calm down. All the food today has been prepared according to the menu we agreed upon. Agreed upon? Ethan shouted incredulously. What are you talking about? My menu is king crab and wagyu beef. Who agreed to this disgusting menu with you? You did yourself, Miss Davis replied with an imperturbable voice. She motioned for an employee to bring her a folder. This is the contract you signed with us. And here is the menu appendix with your signature at the bottom. She opened the last page. There, under a long list of traditional Southern dishes, was Ethan's signature, clear and undeniable. The day he signed the contract, he was too confident, too unprepared. He only glanced at the main clauses, signing all the pages without carefully reading the appendix. He had fallen into the most basic trap. It's her. He raised his head, his bloodshot eyes staring into the void as if seeing me. I'm sure it's that Isabel. She conspired with you to harm me. Where is she? Where is she? He shouted like a crazed beast, starting to search. The scene was total chaos. Guests began to feel the situation was serious. Some quietly left. They had come to congratulate, not to witness such a disgraceful farce. Chloe, after moments of stupefaction, also couldn't bear it. Shame turned into anger. She ran up, not to stop Ethan, but to vent. What have you done, Ethan? She hit his chest with her fists, crying. What have you turned our wedding into? A laughingstock, a circus. I should have known. Marrying a man with a past as complicated as yours was sure to bring trouble. Now look, all of New York will laugh at me. Shut up. Ethan shoved her hard, and she nearly fell. What do you know? This is all my ex-wife's fault. She's here. She's definitely here, laughing at us. He was right. I was here. But not to laugh. I was sitting in a car with black-tinted windows, parked right outside the estate gate, calmly observing everything through a screen connected to a hidden camera. Beside me was my mother, Eleanor, sipping tea, without a single expression on her face. "Is it time, Mom?" I asked, my voice slightly trembling. My mother set down the teacup. "Yes," she nodded. "It's time for the Queen to make her entrance." She gestured to the chauffeur. The iron gates of the estate slowly opened. Our car slowly advanced toward the center of the chaotic scene. All the noises and discussions suddenly ceased. From the couple to the remaining guests, everyone turned in astonishment to look at the luxurious sedan driving in. They knew the protagonist of the show had finally appeared. My mother's black Audi A8 glided smoothly, silently, like a black panther entering its territory. It stopped in the center of the garden, just a few feet from where the couple stood frozen, right where the stage lights shone brightest. All noises faded. Ethan's screams, Chloe's sobs, the guests' murmurs. Everything vanished, leaving only the low hum of the vehicle's engine and the heartbeats of those present. They held their breath, waiting to see who would step out of this luxurious, uninvited car. The car's rear door slowly opened. First, a pair of ruby-red Christian Louboutin stilettos appeared. The blood-red sole, arrogant and authoritative. Then, a slender silhouette in a dazzling ruby-red evening gown. It was me, Isabel. The moment I stepped out of the car, the entire garden fell into an explosive silence. I was no longer the Isabel of yesterday. Not the woman with the tired face, old clothes, and gaze always cast downward. The woman standing before them now was completely different. My hair was pulled back in an elaborate updo, revealing my long neck and sparkling diamond earrings. Professional makeup concealed any trace of fatigue, leaving only a sharp face, red lips, and a calm, cold gaze. The ruby-red dress fit my body, accentuating every curve I had achieved, turning me into a dazzling flame that burned every gaze. I stood tall, with an elegant poise, in complete contrast to the disheveled, mascara-streaked bride Chloe next to me. My appearance, as splendid as it could be, was a silent provocation. A direct slap in the face of Ethan and his family. "Isabel." Ethan was the first to react. Surprise quickly turned into even greater anger. He thought everything, from the Chitlin banquet to this chaos, was my doing to ruin him. "You dare to show up here," he shouted, pointing a finger at me. "This is all you, isn't it? You conspired with them to ruin my wedding. Is it because you're jealous?" He lunged at me like a crazed beast, but was easily stopped by my mother's robust, black-suited chauffeur. "Let me go. I have to teach that wench a lesson," he struggled, shouting expletives. My ex-mother-in-law, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, also reacted. After the initial shock, only hatred remained. She ran up next to her son, beginning her usual dramatics. My God, look at this, everyone," she wailed to the remaining guests. "It's my ex-daughter-in-law. After my son left her, now she comes back to ruin the wedding. What a shameless woman, to proudly return after being thrown out. You can tell she was raised without a proper family." She deliberately emphasized those words, trying to twist the knife in my pain. But it no longer hurt. I watched them act in silence. I saw the man I once loved now insulting me with the ugliest words. I saw the woman I tried to treat as a mother now using the vilest words to humiliate me. The crazier they became, the more miserable their fall would be. "Are you two finished acting?" I finally opened my mouth. My voice wasn't loud, but it was so calm and authoritative that it silenced them both. "You said I ruined your wedding, Mr. Hayes. Look at yourself again and see who is turning this wedding into a laughingstock. Is it me, or is it the groom himself who is screaming and grabbing the waiter by the lapels like a lunatic?" Then I turned to Mrs. Hayes. "Madam, I no longer called her mother. You said I have no shame. Then does a mother-in-law who condones her son's infidelity and conspires with him to trick his daughter-in-law and seize her assets have any shame?" My words were like bullets, piercing directly into their hypocritical faces. They were speechless, unable to reply. "I have not come here today to ruin any wedding," I said. "I have come here as a guest." I held up the vibrant red wedding invitation that Ethan had thrown in my face. The groom himself invited me to come and see what real happiness looks like. I am simply answering his invitation. My audacity made Ethan turn red with rage. You. He was speechless, only able to point a finger at me. This is not your place. Leave right now. Get out of my house right now. My house? I smiled meaningfully. Are you sure this is your house, Mr. Hayes? Of course. The deed is in my name. Get out now, or I'll call security, he shouted. Yes, I said defiantly. Then call them. I'd love to see who the guards of my house obey. My words exploded like another bomb, astonishing everyone. Your house? What are you talking about? Even Ethan hesitated, a vague uneasiness creeping into his mind. Just at that moment, from the chaotic kitchen area, the figure of a woman in an elegant, authoritative dark blue silk suit slowly appeared. Behind her followed a team of about 10 people in black suits with briefcases, a powerful legal team. And that woman was none other than my mother. My mother's appearance was like a sedative that instantly calmed all the chaos. She walked unhurriedly, every step exuding the composure of someone who had the situation utterly controlled. She didn't look at Ethan or Mrs. Hayes. Her gaze swept the entire room, and everyone who met that sharp, authoritative look instinctively had to lower their heads. And then something unexpected happened. Some of the banquet guests, older, influential personalities from the world of business and real estate, were stunned when they saw my mother. They hurriedly stood up to greet her with a respectful bow. Madam Chairwoman Eleanor, what a surprise to see you here. Eleanor, it's been so long. You look as wonderful as ever. Mrs. Vance, what an honor. Ethan and his mother were completely dumbfounded. Madam Chairwoman? What chairwoman? My mother, a homemaker. Why were these successful business people bowing to her? Ma'am. Isabel's mother. Mrs. Hayes stammered, incredulous. How are you here? Who let you in? My mother finally turned slowly toward her. She wasn't angry. She simply looked at Mrs. Hayes with a mixture of pity and contempt. Why do I need your permission to enter my own house? She said in a voice that, though not loud, carried the weight of 1,000 tons. House? Your house. Mrs. Hayes burst into hysterical laughter. You've gone mad. This is my son's house. Don't talk nonsense. Oh, really? My mother offered the same mocking smile I had shown earlier. She gestured to one of the men on her legal team. The lawyer immediately stepped forward, opening his briefcase. Mrs. Hayes, Mr. Hayes, good morning. The lawyer, Mr. Sterling, said firmly. I am Attorney Sterling, representative of the rightful owner of this estate, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. He held up a folder with the red seal of a notary. According to the conditional deed of gift of real property, document number 1234, drafted on March 15th of last year, my client, Mrs. Eleanor Vance, gifted the property of the Haven estate to her daughter, Mrs. Isabel Hayes, and her son-in-law, Mr. Ethan Hayes. The lawyer paused and looked directly into Ethan's face. However, Clause 3.2.2 of the contract clearly states that this contract is only valid as long as Mr. Hayes and Mrs. Isabel Hayes maintain a valid marital relationship. On the 7th of this month, he continued, the Family Court of New York issued a divorce decree for the two of you. This means that the precondition of the contract has been destroyed, and by law, this deed of gift is officially voided. The entire room fell silent. Everyone listened, holding their breath. In conclusion, the lawyer concluded the ownership of this estate has automatically reverted to its original owner, my client, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. Any subsequent documents of title change that Mr. Hayes made Mrs. Isabel Hayes sign through deception are legally invalid. Simply put, Mr. Hayes, you and your family are holding an illegal party on someone else's property. No, it's impossible. It's a lie, Ethan shouted. He lunged to snatch the folder, but was stopped by two of my mother's sturdy bodyguards. These are all state-certified legal documents, Attorney Sterling said coolly. If you don't believe it, we can meet in court. My mother finally stepped forward. She didn't look at Ethan, but at the bride Chloe, who was trembling with a pale face. Congratulations, my dear. My mother's voice suddenly softened. Chloe, right? You are very beautiful. I am Eleanor Vance, chairwoman of the Sovereign Group and also the owner of Royal Provisions, the company you hired. Thank you for trusting our services." Another bomb exploded. Chloe and Ethan were completely petrified. And as the owner of the house, my mother continued, her smile widening. "I personally designed today's menu to entertain the guests. Full of traditional dishes, full of feeling, spicy Brunswick stew, deep-fried chitlins. I heard you don't like rustic food. That's okay. Try it. Maybe you'll like it." Every word my mother spoke was sweet but sharp, stabbing directly into Chloe's pride. The shame, embarrassment, and fear of having married a man about to be ruined made her unable to bear it any longer. "No, I'm not marrying him. I'm not marrying a scammer like you," she screamed. She tore the diamond ring from her finger and threw it in Ethan's face. Then, clutching her cumbersome wedding dress, she ran, crying, out of the estate. Under hundreds of bewildered glances and incessant camera flashes, the performance had come to an end. And the person who had written the finale was none other than my mother. The Grand Dame of American hospitality could not have reappeared in a more spectacular fashion. Chloe's performance ended with a humiliating flight, leaving only a desolate void on the banquet stage. The bride had fled. The dream of a wealthy family had vanished like smoke. And the day's protagonist, the groom, was now just a miserable failure. Ethan remained motionless, stunned amidst the wreckage of his deception, the red mark of the diamond ring Chloe had thrown still visible on his cheek. He no longer shouted or raged. He simply stared with lost eyes at the shadow of his fleeing bride, then down at the plates of chitlins giving off their penetrating odor, and finally, at my mother and me, standing on the winning side. Probably, even at that moment, he couldn't believe this was real, a truth so hard, so miserable, that had fallen upon him in less than an hour. But my mother had no intention of giving him more time to digest it. She had laid the trap, she had waited, and now it was time to collect the net. She didn't want the show to end halfway. She wanted a complete finale, a lesson that those who had tried to trample her daughter would not forget for the rest of their lives. After allowing the guests a few seconds to recover from the bride's dramatic exit, Attorney Sterling spoke again. His voice was cold and firm, without the slightest emotion, like a judge reading a final sentence. "Mr. Hayes," he said, looking directly at the stunned man, "I reiterate once again, in accordance with the provisions of the Civil Code and the certified conditional deed of gift, from the moment the divorce decree between you and Mrs. Isabel Hayes became effective, the deed of gift for the Haven estate was officially voided." He held up the folder once more, emphasizing its legal irrefutability. "This means that all rights of ownership, use, and disposal of this property have automatically been transferred back to its original owner, our client, Mrs. Eleanor Vance. Any act of occupation and use of this address by you and your family after the date of the divorce is an illegal act." Every word from the lawyer was like a hammer blow to the minds of Ethan and his mother. Mrs. Hayes, who had collapsed onto a bench, finally reacted. She staggered up, pointing a finger at my mother. "It's a lie. You are all scammers," she screamed hoarsely. "This house belongs to my son. We have the transfer papers. Isabel signed. You have no right." My mother only looked at her with pity. "Mrs. Hayes," she said calmly, "ignorance of the law is not an excuse to exempt you from guilt. Those papers your son tricked my daughter into signing only have value if his ownership of this house is legitimate. But unfortunately, the moment he decided to divorce my daughter, he himself voided that ownership." She approached, looking her directly in the eye. "You were always very proud of your son, weren't you? You thought he was clever, talented, that he could calculate everything. But look, because of a little greed and myopia, he has become a fool and nobody. Are you still proud of him?" My mother's words were the final thrust that completely pierced Mrs. Hayes's pride. She was speechless, trembling from head to toe. She realized that everything had been a trap, a perfect trap that she and her son had willingly walked into. Attorney Sterling spoke again, his voice now extremely severe. On behalf of the rightful owner, I formally demand that Mr. Ethan Hayes, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, and all unrelated persons vacate the premises of this estate immediately. Vacate? This is my wedding. You have no right to kick me out. Ethan raised his head, his eyes bloodshot. Your wedding is over, Attorney Sterling replied without the slightest concession. The bride has fled, and you are holding an illegal event on someone else's property. According to the law, we have every right to demand that you cease this infringement immediately. If you do not cooperate, we will be forced to request the intervention of law enforcement. You wouldn't dare. Ethan clenched his teeth, trying to cling to his last shred of pride. He couldn't accept being expelled from his wedding of the century in front of hundreds of people. He looked around for support, but only received bewildered looks, compassionate headshakes, and glances of scorn. No one took his side. They had seen enough of his brazenness and stupidity. It was time for the show to end. The final curtain was drawn by an irrefutable order. Seeing that Ethan remained stubborn, my mother said nothing more. She nodded slightly to the lawyer. Attorney Sterling immediately pulled out his phone and quickly dialed a number. Hello, Security Chief. We have some individuals who have illegally entered the chairwoman's property and are causing a disturbance. Please escort them out according to procedure. The call ended. In less than 2 minutes, a security team of about 20 people, all robust, tall, in black uniforms, entered silently and professionally from the gate. They were the Sovereign Group's internal security team, trained to handle the most complex situations. Their appearance completely crushed any will for resistance from Ethan. He watched them approach, their imposing presence letting him know that everything was truly over. The head of the security team bowed respectfully to my mother and me, then turned to Ethan. Mr. Hayes, he said in a low, authoritative voice. We have received instructions to ask you and your family to leave this place. Please cooperate. You don't have the right. Ethan still weakly shouted. We do have the right, the team leader replied. We are exercising our authority to protect the property on behalf of the rightful owner. Then he gestured. 2 security agents immediately approached Ethan and held his arms firmly. Let me go. Do you know who I am? He struggled, but it was useless. His strength was no match for professionally trained people. The image of the groom in his luxury suit being dragged away by 2 sturdy security guards could not have been more miserable, more ridiculous. Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, seeing her son being taken away, screamed and ran to make a scene. Let go of my son. You're thieves. But she was also stopped by 2 female security agents. Madam, please accompany us, they said politely, but their actions were very firm. All the family relatives, who moments ago had been arrogant and smug, were now expelled from the party venue in the most embarrassing way possible. They were let out like a flock of ducks, passing the tables still full of chitlins and Brunswick stew, under the compassionate glances of the remaining guests. Outside the gates of the estate they once considered their paradise. Once the family was evicted, my mother took the microphone from the stage. She did not look at the stunned guests, but at the dozens of press cameras still recording. Ladies and gentlemen, she said, no longer as a mother avenging her daughter, but as an authoritative chairwoman. I am Eleanor Vance, chairwoman of the Sovereign Group. I apologize for making you witness such a lamentable performance today. She paused and smiled. But the banquet is already served, and the food is on the table. If you don't mind these traditional dishes, please help yourselves. Consider this an unexpected launch party for the future Sovereign Group restaurant brand at the Haven Estate. Her words, humorous but sharp, made the entire hall erupt in applause. Not only had she recovered her house, but she had turned a media disaster into an unbeatable public relations opportunity. And as for my daughter, she continued, pulling me to her side, I introduce you to my only daughter, Isabel. She will be joining me in the management and development of this culinary brand. She raised my hand high, and all eyes, all camera lenses, focused on me. I was no longer the abandoned ex-wife. I stood next to my mother as the heir to an empire, as a princess who had reclaimed her kingdom. The wedding of the century had become the disaster of the century for Ethan's family. But for me, it was a new beginning, brighter than ever. I took my mother's hand and looked ahead, where a new future, a new life, awaited me. That fateful night ended with Ethan's family being escorted out of the Haven's gates by the Sovereign Group security team. Before hundreds of eyes and dozens of camera lenses, they were thrown into the night, homeless, without honor, and with nothing more than a bleak and dark future. But that was only the beginning of their hell on earth, a hell built with the bricks of greed, arrogance, and betrayal. That same night, the videos of the wedding and the Chitlin banquet became a storm on social media. Hashtags like #ChitlinWedding, #Revenge of the Century, and #The Grand Dame Strikes Back trended at breakneck speed. It was no longer high society gossip. It became a national media phenomenon. People shared, commented, and created memes. Ethan's anger-distorted face, Chloe's pale face of shame, and especially the image of the luxurious plates of Brunswick stew and chitlins at a multi-million-dollar banquet became immortal memes. The next morning, before the sun fully rose, the real earthquake began. All major media outlets, from online newspapers to prestigious business journals, published shocking headlines in unison. The downfall of the media executive who lost $15 million estate and his future wife, the legal slap of the century, the spicy revenge of chairwoman Eleanor Vance, and from dream wedding to Chitlin disaster, the bitter end of a greedy traitor. Ethan and Chloe's names became more famous than ever, but it was a fame filled with infamy and humiliation. All information about them was dug up by netizens. Ethan's promiscuous past. Chloe's statements about her fake, posturing life on social media. Even the harsh words Mrs. Dorothy Hayes had said to me in the past were revealed by my former friends. Everything came to light. They became the laughingstock of the whole city, the topic of all conversations. For Chloe, the influencer who lived on image and public acclaim, this was a fatal blow, a death sentence for her fake career. Her personal account was attacked by tens of thousands, then hundreds of thousands of people. Not only did they insult her, but they used precisely that rustic food to scorn her. Did you eat chitlins today, sweetie? A mistress gets chitlins and a scammer husband. Let's see if you learn not to despise good food now, you phony. The fashion and cosmetic brands that had signed advertising contracts with her unanimously announced the cessation of collaboration, not wanting their brand image tainted by this embarrassing scandal. Unable to bear the humiliation, she closed all her social media accounts and did not dare to leave her house. The dream of becoming the daughter-in-law of a wealthy family was shattered. Her influencer career vanished, and in its place only remained a stain that would haunt her for life, the nickname, the Chitlin Snob. But the ones who had to bear the most direct and heavy consequences were Ethan and his family. Expelled from the estate, they had nowhere to go. They had to temporarily stay in an old, cramped apartment of barely 400 square feet, the same one Mrs. Hayes had previously criticized as a rat hole, not fitting their status. The harsh contrast between a $15 million estate and an old apartment, between a life of luxury and a miserable reality, was terrible mental torture. But even that temporary peace didn't last long. The media company where Ethan was an executive faced an unprecedented crisis after the scandal broke out. Large clients, sensitive to image, sent emails and called in unison to demand contract terminations. They could not continue collaborating with a media director whose private life was a disaster, a scammer, and a person of bad repute. The board of directors called an emergency meeting. The final decision was quick and ruthless. Fire Ethan immediately and issue a press release declaring they had nothing to do with his personal actions to save the company's remaining reputation. Having lost his job, his house, his future wife, and his honor, Ethan collapsed completely. He no longer shouted or went crazy. He locked himself in that narrow room and drank day and night. He couldn't face anyone. He couldn't answer the phone. He couldn't read the newspapers. But he couldn't escape from himself. My image in the dazzling red dress, my mother's calm smile, and the intense smell of chitlins from that fateful night tormented him every sleepless night. He had everything in his hands, a wife who truly loved him, the house of his dreams, a bright future. But because of his infinite greed and betrayal, He himself had shattered everything. But the hell didn't stop there. My mother, Eleanor, was not a person to do things halfway. She decided to go all the way to teach them an unforgettable lesson about the weight of the law. The Sovereign Group's legal team formally sued Ethan for fraud and misappropriation of assets for tricking me into signing the deed, and for illegal occupation for occupying and using the estate after the property rights were invalidated. With irrefutable evidence from the original contract with the secret clause to the power of attorney he tricked me into signing, victory was almost certain. Furthermore, Ethan also had to face a series of lawsuits from the sponsors of his wedding of the century. They had spent millions promoting their brand, but in the end, they were embroiled in an embarrassing media scandal. They demanded full compensation for damage to their image and costs. Debts accumulated like a snowball, and his future darkened behind bars. His mother, Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, after witnessing her son go from a star to a criminal in an instant, from pride to shame, finally couldn't bear it anymore. The enormous shock aged her 10 years and weakened her health. Life in a cramped, deficient environment, coupled with the neighbors' scorn, led her to be hospitalized in a state of severe nervous and physical exhaustion. She lay in the cold bed of a public hospital, no trace of the composure of the wicked mother-in-law who coveted superficial fame. She was just an old, helpless woman watching her family collapse and be ruined by her own stupidity and greed. The hell on earth was not far away. It was the remorse, regret, and humiliation that would haunt them for life. A never-ending sentence. A year later, when the noise of the scandal had gradually subsided, a new story became the topic of conversation in the Hamptons. But this time, it was not a tragedy or a comedy, but a story full of inspiration and pride. The Haven estate, which had shocked the world with the Chitlin wedding, had now been redressed and had a new mission. It was no longer a closed private estate. My mother and I decided to convert it into a special space, something unprecedented in the U.S., a place that combined high-end American cuisine restaurants with a center for architecture and culinary culture exhibitions. We called it the Heritage Promise. This place not only offered the quintessence of 3 great American culinary traditions, Southern, Western, and Northeast, created by the best chefs of the Sovereign Group in a unique architectural space, but it was also a place to exhibit the designs and models of talented young architects, to organize cultural talks, traditional cooking classes, and weekend markets honoring the organic produce of American farmers. We wanted to turn the estate into a place that honored the value of cultural roots. A place where the children of America could return and feel proud. The opening day of the Heritage Promise was a grand event that attracted the attention of the entire elite, artists, and media. I no longer hid behind the scenes. I wore a silk suit designed by Mrs. Montgomery, standing next to my mother, self-assured and radiant. As the operations director of this project, I was no longer just an interior designer who only knew 4 walls. I learned from my mother, participating in management and operations. I found my passion and regained my value, not by building my own home, but by building and spreading good values for the community. My life is now a succession of busy days, but full of joy. I found happiness in work, in the satisfied smiles of customers, in the admiring glances of young culture lovers. I found myself again, a version of myself much stronger and more complete than before. As for the fate of those who made me suffer, they also had the ending they deserved, a tragic end, written by their own wrong choices. Ethan was sentenced to 3 years in federal prison for fraud, with irrefutable evidence against him. But that was not all. The enormous compensation he had to pay to the sponsors and related parties left him and his family completely ruined. After getting out of prison, he had nothing left. His former company fired him. His friends avoided him. And Ethan Hayes' name became a stain in the media industry. No company wanted to hire him. He had to take all kinds of manual jobs to survive, from delivery driver to waiter at a street food stand. Ironically, a place that sold the food he once despised. Sometimes people see him sitting quietly in a street corner after a hard day's work, staring with lost eyes at the illuminated building of the Heritage Promise. Perhaps at that moment he regrets. He regrets the wife who loved him with all her heart. He regrets the opportunity to change his life that was within his reach, but which he discarded for his own greed and betrayal. But everything was too late. Regret would now be his faithful companion for the rest of his life. Mrs. Dorothy Hayes, after a long hospitalization, was discharged. But the enormous shock had aged her 10 years, and her health was weakened. She had to spend her last days in the narrow old apartment in pain and shame. Her pride, her arrogance, were forever buried with the fall of her precious son. Every day she had to face the truth that her cruel heart and greed had led her entire family to tragedy. It was a mental torture more painful than physical pain. Her entire family had to pay too high a price for their bad choices. They were once high up, looking at me with scorn. But in the end, it was they who sank to the bottom of society. Ending * one evening, while I was in the garden of the Heritage Promise, looking at the water lilies in full bloom in the pond, my mother approached and hugged me. "Do you still hate them?" she asked softly. I shook my head and smiled. "No, Mom. I don't hate them anymore. Maybe I should even be grateful to them. If it weren't for their betrayal, I probably never would have discovered my true strength, nor would I have the meaningful life I have today." That's right. Sometimes a door that closes before our eyes does not mean the end, but it is to open a new, wider, and better path for us. And I found my own way, a path built with self-esteem, effort, and the unwavering love of a truly great mother. I had truly been reborn. Call to action *, I've shared my story, my journey from heartbreak to triumph. Now I want to hear from you. Have you ever faced such a profound betrayal? And if you did, what helped you find your strength again? Tell me in the comments below. I really want to know.